Section 63 of All About Coffee. This is a Librivox recording. All Librivox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit librivox.org. All About Coffee by William Ukers. The Evolution of Coffee Apparatus, Part 3. Coffee Grinding and Coffee Making Chronology. To return to our coffee grinding and coffee making chronology, it is to be noted that in 1875 to 76 to 78, Turner Strobridge of New Brighton, PA, was granted 3 United States patents on a box coffee mill, first made by Logan and Strobridge, later the Logan and Strobridge Iron Company, the latter being succeeded by the Wrightsville Hardware Co. in 1906. In 1878, a United States patent was issued to Rudolphus L. Webb, assigner to Landers, Frary & Clark, New Britain Con., on an improved box coffee grinder for home use. In 1878 and in 1880, United States patents were issued to John C. Dell of Philadelphia on a store coffee mill. In 1879 and in 1880, United States patents were issued to Orson W. Stowe of the Peck, Stowe & Wilcox Co., Southington Con., on a household coffee mill. In 1879, Charles Halstead of New York was granted the first United States patent on a metal coffee pot having a china interior. It was an infuser for home use. In 1880, coffee pots with tops having muslin bottoms for clarifying and straining were first made in the United States by the Duparquet, Huot, and Monod Co. of New York. The name Hungerford first appears in the United States patent records in 1880 to 81 in connection with patents granted to G.W. and G.S. Hungerford on machines for cleaning, scouring, and polishing coffee. In 1882, the Hungerfords, father and son, bought out a roaster. This machine and the one patented by Chris Abele of New York, already referred to, were constructions resulting from the expiration of the original Burns patent of 1864. In 1881, Jabez Burns patented the improved Burns roaster, comprising a turn-over front head serving for both feeding and discharging. Additional United States coffee roaster patents were issued to G.W. Hungerford in 1887 to 89. In the latter year, David Fraser, who came to the United States from Glasgow in 1886, established the Hungerford Co., succeeding the business of the Hungerfords and later being granted certain United States patents already mentioned. In 1910, the Hungerford Co. business was discontinued in New York, and David B. Fraser moved to Jersey City, where he continued to operate as Fraser Manufacturing Co. This business was discontinued in 1918. Chris Abele was an active competitor of the Hungerfords and of the Fraser Manufacturing Co., and his Knickerbocker roaster was sold over a wide territory. He died in 1910, and his son-in-law, Gottfried Bay, succeeded to the business. In 1881, the Morgan brothers, Edgar H. and Charles, began the manufacture of household coffee mills, the business being acquired in 1885 by the Arcade Manufacturing Co. of Freeport, Illinois. The latter concern brought out the first pound coffee mill in 1889. Its mills became very popular in the United States. In 1900, Charles Morgan was granted a United States patent on a glass jar coffee mill with removable glass measuring cup. In 1881, Harvey Ricker of Brooklyn, later of Minneapolis, introduced to the trade in the United States a minute coffee pot, and urn known as the Boss, the name being subsequently changed to Minute. He improved and patented the device in 1901 as a half-minute coffee pot. It is a filtration device employing a cotton sack with a thickened bottom. In 1882, Chris Abele of New York patented an improvement on the old-style Burns roaster with openings cut in the front plate. It was known as the Knickerbocker. As already noted, the machine was a competitor of the Hungerford machine, patented the same year. In 1882, a German patent was granted to Emil Neustadt of Berlin on one of the earliest coffee extract machines. In 1883, Jabez Burns was granted a United States patent on his improved sample coffee roaster. In 1884, the Star coffee pot, later known as the Marion Harland, was introduced to the trade. It employed a wire gauze drip device called a filter, which was fitted to a metal pot. It was extensively advertised and attained considerable popularity. The same year, Finley Acker, of Philadelphia, brought out an improved coffee pot for family trade. Later, he produced his Mo Coffee pot and an individual porcelain drip pot for testing table use. In 1885, F.A. Cauchois, New York, brought out an improved porcelain-lined urn. In 1887 to 88, the Etruscan coffee pot was invented and put on the market by the Etruscan Coffee Pot Co. of Philadelphia. It employed a muslin cylinder with metal ends and a mechanism for combining agitation, distillation, and infusion. It was not unlike the Dakin device of 1848, previously mentioned. In 1890, Abbé Montand Bar-le-Duc, France, began to manufacture a line of coffee roasting machinery which included vertical ball and cylinder machines using wood, coal, coke, or gas for fuel. His best-known makes are Magic and Sirocco. Before 1895, the commercial roaster was little used in France. Since then, the industry has developed, but without displacing the smaller roaster for family use. Ball roasters are popular with shopkeepers, especially the variety manufactured by the Établissement Lauzun à Paris and known as Aromatic, being equipped with electric motors. This firm builds also a larger machine known as Moderne. Other makes of roasters that have attained prominence in France are the Lambert, equipped with a steam condenser, Van den Broek's, having the roasting cylinder lined with wire gauze, and Resin's machine for wholesale plants. The French led off with glass cylinder roasters for home use in the early 70s. They are still popular. One of the developments of the last decade was known as the Bijou, and was operated by clockwork. A similar automatic machine, made of glass, was manufactured and sold in New York in 1908 under the name of the home roaster. As late as 1914, an American inventor produced a home roaster for use in a stove hole. This device had a stirrer in the cover to be rotated by hand. A similar device was sold in 1917 under the name Savo. Home roasting, however, has become a lost art in America. In 1897, Joseph Lambert, of Vermont, began the manufacture and sale in Battle Creek, Michigan, of the Lambert self-contained coffee roaster without the brick setting then required for coffee roasting machines. In 1900, he was joined by A.P. Growens. In 1901, the Lambert Food and Machinery Co. was organized. In 1904, the company was reorganized. Since then, many improvements have been made under Mr. Growens' direction. The Lambert gas roaster, one of the first machines employing gas as fuel for indirect roasting, dates back to 1901, as previously mentioned. The economic roaster is Mr. Growens' latest development for coal or coke fuel. It is a compact, self-contained equipment operating in connection with a new type rotary cooler. He has also recently bought out a gas-fired, electrically operated 600-pound Victory roaster and a 50-pound miniature coffee roasting plant designed for retail stores. In 1897, the Enterprise Manufacturing Co. of Pennsylvania was the first to regularly employ electric motors for driving commercial coffee mills by means of belt and pulley attachments. In 1898, the Hobart Manufacturing Co. of Troy, Ohio, introduced to the trade another early coffee grinder connected with an electric motor and driven by belt and pulley attachment. In 1900, the first gear-driven electric coffee grinder was put on the market by the Enterprise Manufacturing Co. of Pennsylvania. In 1902, the Coles Manufacturing Co. and Henry Tromner of Pennsylvania began the manufacture and sale of gear-driven electric coffee grinders. In 1905, the A.J. Deere Co., Buffalo, New York, began to sell its Royal Electric coffee mills direct to dealers on the installment plan, revolutionizing the former practice of selling coffee mills through hardware jobbers. In 1905, H.L. Johnston was granted a United States patent on a coffee mill. He assigned the patent to the Hobart Manufacturing Co. In 1900, Charles Lewis was granted a United States patent on an improved reversible filtration coffee pot known as the Kin-He. This pot has since been further improved, and the patent rights sold in several foreign countries. It employs a filter cloth in place of the metal or china strainer used in the French drip pot. In 1901, Landers, Frary, and Clark's improved universal percolator was patented in the United States. This pot has proved to be one of the most popular percolators on the American market. This firm brought out the Universal Cafanora, a double glass filtration device, in 1916. It is covered by design and structural patents issued in 1916 and 1917. In 1900, the Burns Swingate sample roasting outfit was patented in the United States. In 1901, Robert Burns of New York was granted 2 United States patents on a coffee roaster and cooler. In 1901, Friedrich Kuchelmeister, Brooks, Austria-Hungary, was granted a United States patent on a coffee roaster having a double-walled drum, the inner being of wire gauze, and the outer of solid iron, designed to prevent scorching of the beans. In 1902, W. M. Still & Sons, London, were granted an English patent on a steam coffee-making machine employing 12 ounces of coffee to the gallon. In 1902, T. K. Baker of Minneapolis was granted 2 United States patents on a cloth filter coffee-making device. In 1903, A. E. Bronson, Jr., a signer to the Bronson-Walton Company, Cleveland, Ohio, was granted a United States patent on a coffee mill. In 1903, John Arbuckle was granted a United States patent on a coffee roasting apparatus employing a fan to force the hot fire gases into the roasting cylinder. From this was developed the jumbo roaster, now used in the Arbuckle plant, which roasts 10,000 pounds an hour. Electric coffee roasting. In 1903, George C. Lester of New York was granted a United States patent on an electric coffee roaster, that is, a machine to roast by electric heat. There were 2 cylinders, the inner being of wire gauze, and the outer of copper and asbestos. Between the 2, 4 electric heaters were placed. There was demonstrated in Germany, in 1906, an electric coffee roaster employing a number of resistance coils consisting of strips of Krupp metal 2 1/2 mm thick, 5 mm broad, and 13 1/2 mm long, wound on porcelain tubes which transmitted the heat to the air within the roasting cylinder. Analysis showed that coffee electrically roasted contained more substances soluble in water than that roasted by coke, as well as considerably more material soluble in ether. This machine was invented by Captain Carl Mogling about 1900. Another electric fuel machine patent was granted in the United States to Robert H. Talbot of Baltimore in 1911. This machine had the electric heater in the center of the roasting cylinder. An electrically heated machine called Ben Franklin was demonstrated in New York in 1918. In 1919, Everett T. Short, Dallas, Texas, was granted a United States patent on an electric roaster. Up to the present writing, no great progress has been made in the United States with the roasting of coffee by electric heat. The Phoenix Electrical Heating Co. manufactured, and the Uno Company Ltd. of London marketed, an electrically heated roaster as far back as 1909. The machine was not altogether satisfactory, even to the makers, and the Uno Company is now experimenting with a new type of electric roaster which it expects will remedy the defects of the early machine. The 1909 roaster was made of 2 concentric cylinders revolving around a set of fixed heating elements, consisting of a series of spiral wires held in position on fireproof clay insulators, these wires being assembled, insulated, and brought out through the fixed sensor to a terminal, or a set of terminals, at one end. In this way, no contact brushes or rings were needed. The machine had a sampling device at one end which threw out a few berries each time it was operated. It was not possible to return these sample berries. Such an arrangement appeared necessary, however, unless one was prepared to have the heating element on the outside of the machine and to pick up the current by means of rings or brushes. When the operator became accustomed to the coffee he was roasting, this was not a matter of great moment, because in England, at least, the average coffee roaster does not require a testing sample unless he is about ready to turn out and to cool the roast. The Uno machine had a capacity of 7 pounds, and the time occupied in roasting was from 8 to 10 minutes, depending on whether the roaster had been freshly switched on or had been running for a few minutes. The wattage was 5,520. The consumption per hundredweight was under 13 units. The makers gave, as the most economical pressure on which to work, 220 to 240 volts. The machine was operated for 18 months in the show window of a London retail grocer. In 1921, a United States patent was granted to Mark T. Seymour Stowe, New York, on an electric coffee and peanut roaster, which has the heating element embedded in a cement-lined cylinder that contains a roasting cage. In 1921, Fred J. Coolmere and Ralph J. Quell of Burlington, Iowa, were granted a United States patent on a small household coffee roaster electrically equipped and roasting by electric heat. Other machinery patents. In 1903, Luigi Giacomini of Florence, Italy, was granted a United States patent on a process for roasting coffee. In 1905, A. Warner, a signer to Landers, Frary & Clark, New Britain Con, was granted 2 United States patents on a coffee mill. In 1906, Ludwig Schmidt, a signer to the Esmueller Mill Furnishing Co., St. Louis, was granted a United States patent on a coffee roaster. This company and the Reuter Jones Manufacturing Co., also of St. Louis, were making machines similar to the original Burns model. The Reuter Jones Manufacturing Co., in 1910, brought out a self-contained gas roaster called the St. Louis Jr. In 1913, at a receiver's sale, A.P. Growens of the Lambert Machine Co. acquired all the machinery and patent rights of the Reuter Jones Manufacturing Company. In 1904, J.W. Chapman and G.W. Kuhlman, assigners to Manning, Bowman & Co., Meriden Con, were granted a United States patent on a coffee or teapot. The same year, George E. Savage and G.W. Hope were granted 2 United States patents on coffee or teapots, also assigned to Manning, Bowman & Co. In 1904, Sigmund Sternau, J.P. Stepp, and L. Strasburger, assigners to S. Sternau & Co., New York, were granted a United States patent on a percolator. 6 others were granted to Charles Nelson and assigned to S. Sternau & Co. in 1912 and 1913 for a percolator, the manufacture and sale of which were discontinued in 1915. In 1905, a celebrated case was decided in Kansas City involving litigation between William E. Baker of Baker & Co., Minneapolis, and the F.A. Dunco Manufacturing Co. of St. Joseph, Missouri, over Mr. Baker's patent rights and a machine to produce steel-cut coffee. The suit was brought in 1903, and Mr. Baker contended that his patent gave him the exclusive right to the uniformity of granules by means of the sharply dressed mechanism, and by the use of a fan for blowing away the silver skins produced by his machine, while the defendant said he obtained the same result by grating the granules through screens or sieves. The defense was that Mr. Baker's process was not a discovery, because grinding coffee was as old as the world's knowledge, and winnowing the chaff was equally ancient. The lower court dismissed the bill because the patents sued upon are devoid of patentable invention, and the United States Court of Appeals confirmed the decision. In 1905, Frederick A. Cauchois of New York brought out his private estate coffee maker, a clever combination of the French drip and filter processes, employing a thin layer of Japanese paper as a filtering agent. The same year, Finley Acker of Philadelphia was granted a United States patent on a percolator employing 2 cylinders perforated on the sides with a sheet of percolator paper placed between them to act as a filtering medium. In 1906, George Savage and J.W. Chapman, assigners to Manning, Bowman & Co. of Meriden Con, were granted a United States patent on a coffee percolator. In 1906, Alonzo A. Warner, assigner to Landers, Frary & Clark, New Britain Con, was granted a United States patent on a coffee percolator. In 1906, H.D. Kelly, Kansas City, was granted a United States patent on the Kellum automatic coffee urn, employing a coffee extractor in which ground coffee is continually agitated before percolation by a vacuum process. 16 patents followed. In 1906, Desiderio Pavoni of Milan, Italy, was granted a patent in Italy for an improvement on the Bezzera system for preparing and serving coffee as a rapid infusion of a single cup, first introduced in 1903 to 1904. It is known as the ideal urn, and makes 150 cups per hour. Among other Italian rapid coffee-making machines which, with this one, have attained considerable prominence in Europe and South America, mention should be made of La Victoria Arduino, made by Pier Tesio Arduino of Turin, Italy, introduced in 1909, that makes 1,000 cups per hour. It was patented in the United States in 1920. There are, also, La Italiana Sovereign Filter Machine made by Bossi Vernetti and Bartolini Turin, and Jose Barros Express, Buenos Aires, making 600 cups an hour. In 1908, A.E. White, Chicago, was granted a United States patent on a coffee urn. He assigned it to the James Heek & Co. of Cincinnati. In 1908, I.D. Reichemer, Chicago, introduced his trickleator to the trade and the consumer. This is an aluminum device to fit any coffee pot, combining French drip and filtration ideas with Japanese paper as the filtration medium. In 1908, an improved type of Burns roaster was patented in the United States. The improvement consisted of an open perforated cylinder with flexible back head and balanced front bearings. The following year, the Burns tilting sample roaster for gas or electric heating units was patented. In 1909, Frederick A. Cauchois of New York was granted a United States patent on a coffee urn fitted with a centrifugal pump for repouring. In 1909, C.F. Blanc of St. Louis was granted 2 United States patents on a china coffee pot with a cloth filter, the sides tightly and the bottom loosely woven. In 1911, Edward Aborn of New York was granted a United States patent on his Make-Right coffee filter device. This was later incorporated with improvements in a True Brew coffee pot, on which he was granted another patent in 1920. In 1912, John E. King of Detroit was granted a United States patent on an improved coffee percolator for restaurants, employing a sheet of filter paper on a ring in a metal basket, the ring to be removed once the filter paper was in position on the perforated bottom plate of the percolator basket. In 1913, F. Ware, Los Angeles, perfected a coffee-making device in which a metal perforated clamp was employed to apply a filter paper to the underside of an English earthenware adaptation of the French drip pot. In 1912, William Lawton demonstrated in London a gas coffee roaster of his own invention, by means of which he roasted coffee in suspension to a light brown color in 3 minutes. Herbert L. Johnston, assigner to the Hobart Electric Manufacturing Co., Troy, Ohio, was granted a United States patent on a machine for refining coffee in 1913. In 1914, the Phylax coffee maker, embodying an improvement on the French drip principle, was introduced to the trade. The process was demonstrated by Benjamin H. Calkin of Detroit in 1921 as an art of brewing coffee. In 1914, Robert Burns, assigner to Jabez Burns & Sons, New York, was granted a United States patent on a coffee granulating mill. In 1914-15, Herbert Galt of Chicago was granted 3 United States patents on the Gate coffee pot, made of aluminum and having 2 parts, a removable cylinder employing the French drip principle, and the containing pot. In 1915, the Burns Jubilee gas coffee roaster was patented in the United States and put on the market. In 1915, the National Coffee Roasters Association home coffee mill, employing an improved set screw operating on a cog and ratchet principle, was introduced to the trade. In 1916, a United States patent was granted to I.D. Richheimer, Chicago, for an infused improvement on his trickleator. In 1916, Saul Blickman, assigner to S. Blickman, New York, was granted a United States patent on an apparatus for making and dispensing coffee. In 1916, Orville W. Chamberlain, New Orleans, was granted a United States patent on an automatic drip coffee pot. In 1916, Jules Lepage, Darlington, Indiana, obtained 2 United States patents on cutting rolls to cut, and not to grind or crush, corn, wheat, or coffee. These were subsequently incorporated in the Ideal Steel Cut coffee mill and marketed to the trade by the B.F. Grump Co., Chicago. In 1917, Richard A. Green and William G. Burns, assigners to Jabez Burns & Sons, New York, were granted patents in the United States on the Burns Flexible Arm Cooler, providing full fan suction to a cooler box at all points in its track travel. In 1919, Joseph F. Smart, assigner to Landers, Frary, and Clark, New Britain Con, was granted a United States patent on a percolator. In 1919, Charles Morgan, assigner to the Arcade Manufacturing Co., Freeport, Illinois, was granted a United States patent on an improved grinding mill. In 1919, Edward F. Schnuck, assigner to Jabez Burns & Sons, New York, was granted a United States patent on an improvement for a gas coffee roaster. In 1920, he was granted a United States patent on an improved process of twice cutting coffee and removing the chaff after each cutting. In 1920, Natale de' Matti of Turin, Italy, was granted a United States patent on a rapid coffee filtering machine. In 1920, Frederick H. Muller of Chicago was granted a United States patent on an art of making coffee and on an improved apparatus for hotels and restaurants, which comprised a series of superposed metal containers, or cartridges, of ground coffee placed in a perforated bucket designed to rest in a coffee urn, the cartridges being lifted out as the boiling water poured on them syncs with the drying off of the decoction at the faucet. In 1920, Alfredo M. Salazar of New York was granted a United States patent on a coffee urn in which the coffee is made at the time of serving by using steam pressure to force the boiling water through ground coffee held in a cloth sack attached to the faucet. In 1920, William H. Bruning, Evansville, Indiana, was granted a United States patent on an improved French drip pot made of aluminum and provided with a vacuum jacket in the dripper section and a hot water jacket in the serving portion to keep the beverage hot. In 1921, the Manthe Zorn Laboratories Co. of Cleveland brought out a rapid coffee infuser and dispenser employing in the infuser a centrifugal to make an extract in 38 seconds, and designed to deliver a gallon of concentrated liquid, or coffee base, every 3 minutes. The dispenser automatically combines the coffee base with boiling water in a differential faucet, in the proportion desired, usually 1 of base to 4 of water. The dispenser serves 600 cups per hour. An additional faucet may be added which will double the capacity. Among foreign coffee makers applying the French drip principle, the Vienna coffee-making machine, known in the United States as the Bohemian coffee pot, has met with much favor in this country. Elsewhere, it is known as the Carlsbad. It is made of china, and the European manufacturer has a patent on the porcelain strainer, or grid, which is provided with slits that are very fine on the inner side but that widen on the outer side to permit careful straining and to facilitate cleaning. Some of the latest developments in coffee apparatus were shown at the Industrial Exposition at the National Coffee Roasters Association, held in New York, November 1–3, 1921. Among items of distinction not heretofore included in this work, mention should be made of an American-French coffee biggin, being a French drip pot made of American porcelain and fitted with a muslin stainer, a glass urn liner intended to supplant the porcelain liner, and an electric repouring pump designed to be attached to any type of coffee urn. Careful research of the records of the United States Patent Office discloses that the number of patents relating to coffee apparatus and coffee preparations issued from 1789 to 1921 is as follows. United States Coffee Patents. Coffee Mills, 185 patents. Coffee roasting devices and improvements thereon, 312 patents. Coffee making devices, 835 patents. Coffee cleaning, hulling, drying, polishing, and plantation machinery in general, 175 patents. Miscellaneous patents for coating, glazing, treated coffees, substitutes, etc., 300 patents. Total, 1,807 patents. It must be borne in mind that there was a number of patents granted on machines that were intended for, and used for, coffee, but that did not mention coffee in the specifications. Many coffee dryers were listed as grain dryers, for instance. Also, many excellent devices have been made that were never patented. End of section 63.